Sorry, yes, I'm having spaghetti for breakfast.
It's perfect,
Yum.
perfectly acceptable breakfast food.
I know, right?
Perfectly acceptable.
That spaghetti you made, Ben, was super good. I was having it the next day. I'm like, nom, 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 nom. Hello and welcome to Because Language, a podcast about linguistics, the science of language. I'm Daniel Midgley. Let's meet the team. Back from her travels around the world, it's Hedvig Hurgard.
Hello. I'm back.
You're back in Germany?
I'm back in Germany. It's very nice.
You're back with your kitties, and as a fellow person who has a kitty, I feel it. I feel how like you must have walked in the door and just been like, come to me.
Yeah, it's very nice. They're very sweet ones.
Were the cats like, oh, it's you?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, they're
much.
cuddly. They're a bit cuddlier than usual, but also it's been the weather is getting colder, so they get cuddlier.
Oh, so they're like, zhunk.
Like, yes, I sleep
Yep.
with you.
That's very cute.
Back from his trip to the other room, possibly past the fridge for a drink on the way there, it's Ben Ainsley.
Accurate.
Yeah.
You didn't come
I've
all that way.
no feedback to offer, no notes. That is a
Did I
really
guess?
appropriate thing about my life. Because there is a triangle between things where I can play video games, things where I can sleep, and things where I can acquire food. That's the holy trinity of everything I actually want in the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's the real golden triangle.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's my happy zone right there, and somewhere in that triad.
Hey, later on this episode, we're going to be chatting with Dr. Hannah Little about her upcoming book about how science fiction has influenced linguistic research. Like, actually had a big pull on the way we do things in linguistics. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
That is going to be a lot of fun. She's a very funny lady and smart.
Well, it's nice to have you all here on the recording, but it was super nice to have you all here at my place, to have you, Hedvig, in Perth recently. That was so great.
Yeah, I was just going to say that one of the great things about meeting all of you in the flesh world in Perth is also that now when I look at you in Zoom and I see your rooms, I actually know where you are.
It's not just one tiny slice of a disconnected.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you always kind of knew where Daniel's pantry was, though, right? Because we can see 90% of where he's in because it's such a small place.
Well, now I know, like, what the kitchen looks like and, like, the pantry's next to the kitchen.
It is surprising how much more central in the house, in the activity zone of the house than you would think it is, right?
Yeah.
Like, you would think that he would find, like, a squirreled away little spot. No, dead center.
Yeah.
Boom.
Fridge on one side, oven on the other. Let's go.
The hub.
And Ben, I really liked your house as well, and I liked your bookcase thing, and your sofa's very nice, and like I know where that is. It's nice.
Ben made us dinner.
Yeah.
I made sketty.
Yes. Very good.
Yeah, but it wasn't typical spag bowl. It was like really elaborate. It was elaborate spaghetti.
I slow roasted cherry tomatoes in a reduction of balsamic vinegar and then mixed that in with a topping of fresh basil and goat cheese.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's very
spaghetti.
good.
It was really good.
Yeah.
So while Hedvig was here, the three of us made a bonus episode for our patrons. It was us sitting out on a beautiful Monday morning, beautiful Monday morning, talking about the show, talking about ourselves, which you would not think was that interesting, but then, you'd say the same thing about linguistics as well.
True.
So,
Wait,
if you want to see that episode, what?
I mean, none of our listeners would say that about linguistics.
I think he meant generally.
Okay.
I think after watching the episode, I think you won't say that about us either. We're actually quite interesting. We're quite compelling.
Now, the only problem is we totally recorded that bonus episode as if it was like a great primer for people coming to Because Language. So I don't know if it makes the best sense as like a only for the patrons episode.
Well, one thing that people are saying on our Discord is that it just has a really nice vibe, and I felt that as well. I felt like it
birds.
captures sort of the birds singing,
Yeah.
us drinking coffee, switching from camera 1 to camera 2 every once in a while.
Yeah, vibes are good.
It was great. So if you want to see that, become a patron. You'll be supporting the show, getting goodies besides, like bonus episodes, invites to live episodes, our yearly mail out, ooh, that's coming, and access to our wonderful Discord community. So come on over and sign up. It's patreon.com/becauselangpod.
What is going on in the world? It's been like 2 weeks. Hedvig has like traveled around the world. There has to be some pretty significant update-a-roonies going on. What have you got for us?
There have been a lot of interesting stories. This one has been suggested by Pharaoh Cat, who is going to helm an entirely Pharaoh Cat curated show pretty soon. Bonus episode there.
Exciting.
Daniel Andrews, who's the MP. MP? Is he? I thought he... Okay, this is where my ignorance of Australian politics comes to the fore. I should have looked this up. He's not the Premier of Victoria, is he?
No, Dan Andrews is the... Yeah, no, he is. I'm going to quickly double-check that, but I'm 95% sure he is.
But his Twitter handle is Daniel Andrews MP.
Premier of Victoria. Well, he's still a member of Parliament.
He's still a member of Parliament.
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't have a handy 2-letter abbreviation for premiers, so...
Things I should know. So he tweeted this: a re-elected Labour government will redevelop and expand Maroondah Hospital from the ground up. It will be renamed in honour of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
Boo! Sorry, I didn't even need you to get to the end. That is such a massive boo.
Oh, I don't have any I try not to have feelings about sports and royals.
No, you should have feelings about royals. They're bad. We don't need royals.
I just want a republic. I'm a Republican, definitely.
I feel like this is not a particularly I know it feels like it is at the moment because everyone, in Australia, for those of you who are listening outside of Australia, when the Queen's funeral happened, it was simulcast on every terrestrial broadcast station. And I'm not joking. You could flip through the entire catalogue of Australian TV channels and it was on every single one. Admittedly, there's 5, so, it's not like 36 cable channels or whatever, but still.
No.
And so I realized that it's probably it seems like a kind of take, I guess, but no, massive boo. We don't need to name staff after the royal family of a different country. That's what
anymore. Yeah. By the way, Hedvig, we had a discussion once about King Charles. Now, I thought that once he was in power, that people would go, you know what, time to end this royal stuff. But you thought that people would say in Australia, no, let's give him a chance, see what he does. Ben, are you noticing either of those two sentiments in your circles?
I don't see much interest or care about King Charles III.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of end of an era, oh my God, this is so huge, blah, 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 blah. I think a lot more people cared about the ending of a thing than they do about the beginning of a thing.
And also because she represented, I was listening to the Swedish political commentary, Jontan Unge was saying she represented the end of an era and the end of the idea of Britain as an empire. And that maybe now they can shed the fake idea that they're still an empire and just be a European country. And get on with life. Lots of European countries have kings and queens and import and export and, former colonies and current colonies. And Britain can just step down and stop pretending, which maybe is nice.
I don't know, man. I got to be honest, given who's in charge of Britain at the moment, I'm not thinking that's coming down the pipe anytime soon.
No, and I think we should...
I don't mean King Charles, by the way. I mean their Prime Minister.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I feel like it's worth acknowledging that a lot of people really liked the Queen and were very sad when she died. But what we're having discussions about now is the royalty as an institution and not the person. And also she's already passed naming a hospital in Perth, right? After...
No, somewhere, Victoria.
Victoria.
In Melbourne, right?
Yeah, but this is a good point though, Hedvig. I'm glad you mentioned that because we have one of those already in Western Australia. We have the Queen Elizabeth II health campus.
Right.
It's our 3rd biggest hospital.
You don't need another one.
And we've got we've got Elizabeth Quay. We've got so much shit named after this lady. We don't need more.
And can I ask, is Maroondah Hospital in a suburb called Maroondah?
Yes, and the name...
Because that sounds like a good name.
It's a Woiwurrung name. It means leaf, which, according to the Maroondah website, says it symbolizes Maroondah's green environment. So it means leaf in Woiwurrung.
If they're in a suburb called Maroondah or a city called Maroondah and they're the Maroondah Hospital, then if you now become the Queen Elizabeth II Hospital, how many of those do we have in the world?
Yeah,
the Googleability of that is very bad. Very bad.
I agree with you. I don't think it's the most significant thing. I think the most significant thing is beyond simply, end of an era and all this kind of stuff. The the crown doesn't represent good things. Right? Like it's not an institution, and I'm not even much of a Republican in the sense that like I desperately want Australia to be a republic. Like I don't really have any baseline issues with how the actual system of government functions in Australia, but it just so happens that there's this weird, archaic thing, this vestigial feature, this
weird fondness.
Like this whale hips of a thing politically sitting there that we just need to get rid of. It just doesn't.
Yeah, it's silly.
Especially when it displaces Aboriginal naming. You know, we can't just say that if you name something, if you give something an Aboriginal name, that you're done. But boy, oh boy, symbolism matters, and the optics on this are just atrocious.
It's particularly interesting for a Labor government as well. I could see a Liberal government doing this any day of the week, right? Like a conservative politician dog whistling to their like base. It's a weird move for a Labor dude.
Yeah, who matters? You know, who's this about? So Jack Lattimore of The Age writes that Indigenous leaders complained and the Premier doubled down.
Oh, good.
He said they, that is the Indigenous leaders, the Assembly, they are elected to negotiate treaties. That's what they need to do. That's what they're elected to do, and we're delivering that treaty. So, in other words, just shut up and stick to doing your job.
Weird move.
Yeah, this is a bizarre,
I feel like
bizarre
when
move.
I think that something is that weird, I'm missing some information. Like, there's something else going on here. There's some sort of dog whistling or something in that electorate or something that I don't know about because, like, it looks
I agree.
weird.
I feel like he's had someone in his ear, some apparatchik who's gone, we've run the numbers, and there's this, like, swing voter block who you really need to get on side or something like that. Because this is just such a bizarre thing to do.
And I'm sure it has something to do with the time. You know, the timing matters on this.
Sure. Like, she just died. Like, it's in everyone's... Like, if this happened 8 years from now, it would be really, really weird.
Well, thanks, Ferrocat, for helping us shine a light on that. We'll keep an eye on this issue as we do with names and naming. Hedvig, you brought us a story about plain language in New Zealand?
Yes, so there's a discussion in New Zealand about a plain language bill. So these happen all over the world regularly where governments are like, our bureaucracy is too complicated. We need to simplify it so that people understand the information we are distributing to them. And in New Zealand, they're discussing such a thing. And some people are saying that this is a waste of resources. It's already plain enough. And they're going back and forth. And so it's interesting in the case of New Zealand, but I thought of it as an addition to our show also because I think it's a movement in many places. I don't know if Australia has had like a official plain language movement in bureaucracy, but like a lot of other countries have, and it's generally good stuff.
Now, when we say in bureaucracy, because bureaucracy is a relatively nebulous term, right? Do we mean legal jargon?
Yeah.
In most instances is going to be uncomplicated? Because that seems like a pretty impossible task if you've ever spoken to a lawyer in a professional sense.
No, it can be done.
It can be done, but in this act, I took a look at the wording. It looks like it's not very well defined.
Okay.
Here's the wording. In this act, plain language means language that is A, appropriate to the intended audience, and B, clear, concise, and well organized. Which sounds great, right? But what does that mean operationally?
Okay, wait, hang on though. Appropriate to the intended audience? Like,
yeah,
you could get away with a lot that way, right?
Do you want to hear examples?
Yes.
Okay, so in the Guardian article, they have a couple of examples because they have a plain language best sentence transformation award. So the sentence, where it has been identified and it is possible to update this, it has been undertaken ensuring future band allocation is correct. This is from the New Zealand Transport Authority.
Band allocation. And the good version of that?
And that has been made into, where possible, we've identified and updated affected submodules to make sure they're assigned to the correct levy band going forward.
Now, I think the interesting thing in that example, because I'm looking at it word for word here, they haven't actually simplified it in a vocabulary sense, right?
No.
So this is all about grammar.
Yeah. So some...
Like the first passage was just horrendously written.
Yeah. No, so some of them, the other longer one I like this one. The first sentence for the other one. So this is the government stats department. Over the year, we tested the innovation readiness and change adaptability of the organization. And that became, we tested how ready our organization was to innovate and make changes.
Yeah, I'll pay that.
That is better.
That's totally.
Sounds pretty good.
It's so interesting. They basically, you could call this a Grammarly bill, essentially. like they're going to feed all of their copy into this thing, and Grammarly's going to go through it and be like, this sounds a bit clunky and difficult. Perhaps condense it to this.
There's two ways that I go about this. One part of this annoys me because I talk to a lot of people about language and I get a lot of complaints about the way politicians talk, right? It's a generic sort of complaint. People want to complain about the way politicians talk. They don't want to analyze how they talk or see why they're talking the way they do. They just don't like politicians or, the generic politician that they imagine. So this really feeds right into a kind of complaint culture that people are really happy to sign on to. On the other hand, there's a real need to have writing be comprehensible, and check out part 7.2a, link on our website, becauselanguage.com. It says the guidance, the writing, must include guidance to support the accessibility of relevant documents, including the accessibility of those documents to people with disabilities. To which I'm like, yes!
Yeah.
Make sure that part's in there.
I agree with a level of based on the examples that we just read, all for it, go for it, fantastic. Because the writing isn't so difficult that people without a good education can't access it, although that is potentially happening, right? I think the writing is so dry and boring, even people with the necessary education are not going to slog through it because it's just so potentially deliberately. I would argue this is the result of overworked governmental employees banging a thing out and going basically like, what's the minimum amount I need to do to make this publishable? Okay, that's what I'll do. I've done it. And so I don't think people are, I agree with you, Daniel. I don't think this is a deliberate collusion of politicians who are like, I'm going to make it so difficult to read that no one will understand. I think that is happening, just not deliberately.
Yeah.
I think it's happening through a combination of laziness and low resources. And so because of that, I do think people aren't as armed when it comes to going toe to toe with their government as they could be, because when someone goes, oh, well, just look at the statutes, and then you blow the dust off this tome from the state library and you open it up and ghosts fly out, and then you read this just biblically boring text and you give up, right? So if they can make something that's plain that will give the average citizen the ability to arm themselves well, so that if a roadblock in the system is oh, well, that's not how we do that, they can go, well, actually, I've read it and it very clearly says that you can do this, so could you please do it?
Yeah, it's an equity and fairness issue. And I think what we're talking about is also plain language in communication from the government to its citizens, not necessarily, for example, the law book. I mean, when it comes to the law, it is a certain way, and changing that is a bigger task than what I think this is about. And I mean, I believe that a lawyer education is essentially a very complicated interpretation education. It is.
Spicy take. I love it.
They learn lawyerese.
Yeah.
And then they try and transmit that knowledge to someone else. That's
my favorite phrase for this. They are jargonauts.
Yeah.
Jargonauts.
And we need them, and that's what they do. But yeah, no, I think this is fundamentally a good thing. Very good thing.
People are very suspicious of jargon because they think it's trying to keep them out, but linguists have jargon. We use it when we're trying to describe stuff that we do, and people think there's some kind of spurious motive. Well, I don't see this as trying to make things more comprehensible, at least not the examples that we've seen. I see it as people picking up on jargon because they just hate it and they're complaining about it. Whenever I see people complaining about jargon, I'm like,
I didn't see jargon being fixed here. Did you? I didn't see any jargon being removed. The words mostly are the same. They've just made it more readable and less baffling.
And also, jargon has a purpose. So when linguists talk to other linguists, jargon is a shorthand, and you're talking to other linguists. But that's the point.
Totally.
You need to know who your audience is. And when bureaucrats make texts and write it as if they're writing to other bureaucrats and not take into account that their audience isn't other bureaucrats, it's random citizens, then you get problems. Jargon is great, but it's good for intra-group communication. And these things aren't intra-group communication. That's the issue.
Yeah.
They're inter-group communications.
If it can be done well, then that's great. This law won't teach people to write better or more comprehensibly. And that needs to happen. Definitely. It is in part a social justice issue. I look at this and I see this feeding into complaint culture, which is annoying, but maybe an unavoidable side effect.
I think people should complain when they don't understand what their government is saying to them.
Yes, I agree. I think they should switch the rule that the West Australian has, the one newspaper we have in Perth, right? Their style guide is you cannot write an article pitched higher than a year 10 level education, right? And I don't think that that is an appropriate rule for the one newspaper, because we need a higher level of discourse in the one newspaper we have, right? Like we can't glass ceiling it there. I feel like we should switch it. We should just go, okay, take the West Australian style guide, give it to the bureaucrats, right? No one under a year 10 education can understand your shit. Then you don't get to write your shit. And then to the West Australian be like, a little bit more, please. Just a little bit more, please.
There was one really interesting thing about this that I caught. This was from the article by Tess McClure in The Guardian. You know how people say that they're using the passive voice when they're trying to evade responsibility? Like you can do that. You can say mistakes were made, not by me. But a lot of people, including journalists, refer to any time somebody is trying to make an action seem agentless, they just call it the passive voice, even when the passive voice isn't being used. So saying the suspect was shot is passive voice, and saying a shooting occurred is not passive voice. But they both make the shooting seem like no one did it, and everyone calls them both the passive voice.
I think that's okay.
You think just calling them both the passive voice is no big deal?
Yeah.
I mean, grammatically it's wrong, but in the popular understanding, what people mean by passive voice is changing, right?
Yeah, I think it's okay.
Sometimes there's a feeling that we need to have a different term for it besides passive voice. Just if we can flip a switch and get people on a different track to call it something else, not passive voice, maybe it could be better. This article makes reference to what someone calls the past exonerative tense.
No, hate it.
Which is interesting.
I like that.
Hate it.
I do too.
I like passive voice.
You like passive voice?
Yeah, I think it pertains to the, like, it describes actions as just occurring, like everyone is passive. And in the popular mind, I think the word voice signifies like a standpoint. So like I like grammar and I know that voice is like diathesis and blah, blah, blah. But I think passive voice is great. I don't think reinventing the wheel is not always a good thing.
It's actually an aspect, isn't it?
Passive voice?
Well, passive voice in the grammatical sense is a voice, but this exonerative usage seems more like an aspect to me.
Aspect is about the internal temporal organization of something. It's really tiny. So it's like whether an action is completed or reoccurring or every Thursday or is finished or ongoing. That's aspecty things.
Okay, not an aspect.
So
how about if we call it weasel voice?
This could be epistemicity, like the stance of the speaker. But
I was going to say stance. You could say agentless stance, but nobody's going to go for that.
No, passive voice is great.
You like passive voice.
Yeah.
I can accept that because I know that language changes and people will there will be different senses for the same term. I would like to call it weasel voice because everyone knows voice.
I'm going to back away from weasel voice simply because in this instance, it can be used to like sort of remove one's agency from the process. But there are valid instances in journalism where you have to do that, right? Like, so if you're reporting under things that are under like a judge, you have to use passive voice because you can't actually make it seem like anyone has done anything. So like passive voice is like a necessary thing. And so calling it weasel voice feels, I don't know,
you don't like
a little
that.
bit. Oh yeah, this article about a person who was accused of murder who later got off because they didn't do it was just totally written in weasel voice. It feels like you're, I don't know.
Okay. Passive voice it is. We're just going to have to accept that there's a popular understanding of passive voice and then there's a grammatical understanding of passive voice.
I mean, that's already
there's lots of things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like agent, subject, topic,
mood.
Yep. Like, it's fine.
Whoa. What do you mean? What? Mood? What? Mood can't mean more than one thing, surely. Nah,
yeah.
Go back. I don't want to know.
Pull out.
Yeah, I'm ripcording that one for sure.
Okay, let's move on. This one was suggested by Aristemo. We remember Bodie McBoatface, don't we?
Yeah.
I liked it at the time, and then wow, it really died the slowest and
Really
most
aged,
painful of
didn't it?
deaths.
I really liked it.
Oh.
I was in Liverpool and it was dark there, and like we were doing a little boat tour, and they were like, "Oh, here's like this old building," and then the guide accidentally said, "Oh, and like in that corner you can kind of see Bodie McBoatface," and everyone was like, "Where? What?"
Bodie McBoatface?
Like a celebrity.
You mean the David Copperfield Express?
Yeah.
So what do we have to name? Because we have done quite a few of these stories. I know what's coming. We have to name something new now, right?
We have to name something new. NASA has asked Twitter users to name the probe to Uranus.
Oh,
The Uranus
yes.
Orbiter and Probe mission. Okay, so here we
so
go.
much butt stuff coming up.
Butt stuff is enjoyable. So one user said Proby McProbeface, naturally. Another Operation Butt Plug. Someone else responds, this seems like the perfect time for Astroglide to sponsor space exploration. Or the Planetary Orbital Observation Probe, aka the Poop.
Okay.
Well,
I kind of like poop because it's acronym. Sorry, it's acronym because it is an acronym, right? Because we're saying it. It's not an
Did you say
initialism.
abbreviation?
nobody cares about the difference between initialisms and acronyms anymore.
Okay. So I like that it actually means a very good thing. Like that's the fun thing about dirty acronyms, I reckon, is if you can make them, they're not fun if they don't quite work. They're only fun if they really, really, really definitely work.
Poop works.
Poop works
Poop's
really
good.
well. Planetary Orbital Observation Platform?
Yeah.
Is that
I
what
have
it was?
already forgotten, and it's Planetary Orbital Observation Probe. See,
Probe.
I've already forgotten what it really was, and it's poop. It's just
Fantastic.
poop to me now.
I'm team poop.
I'm team poop
Team
as well.
poop.
Yeah, it's good.
We are team poop. Yes.
Yeah.
Now, I have a suggestion for the planet Uranus. While I'm being the guy who wants to change everything and getting voted down, I'm prepared to nominate something else to change, and I will get voted down.
Okay.
Instead of calling the planet Uranus,
Boo. I'm already against it.
Yeah, me too.
Sorry.
I knew it. I knew it.
Go on. Give us your terrible idea. Let me shoot it down properly.
Can I suggest that we call it by its Hindi name, Varuna? That's the Sanskrit equivalent. Varuna was the god of the water and the celestial ocean, as well as a god of law of the underwater world. It's about time we had a Hindu deity in the names for planets.
Yeah.
I got it. I hate this less. I got to be honest. I do. Yeah, like you're winning me over.
It would stop a lot of sniggering in astronomy class. And if we do change it to Varuna, then here's the mnemonic. My very educated mother just served vegan nachos. And who doesn't love vegan nachos?
What is it currently? I don't know any of the mnemonics for the planets.
Well, when I was a kid, it was my very educated mother just served us 9 pizza pies, but then Pluto got demoted. So I guess served us nachos? Served us nachos,
yeah.
but now she served vegan nachos. Although I don't mind the cheese.
I like Varuna. I'm on board. I like it.
So,
Really?
wait.
Yep.
I'm astounded. Really?
Well, because it's non-Western, right? Like we've named everything after like Western shit. And why not?
I have a question.
Western poop.
So,
Yes.
Uranus, I looked it up, is so the Latin equivalent is Caelus, and it's the god of the sky. And you just said that Varuna was the god of water.
Oh, I said it was the Sanskrit equivalent, didn't I? Okay, I'm not certain that that is true. Let me just change that. It is Sanskrit, and it might be a totally different god, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I was just, because normally when you flip, like, you take another sky god.
Hold on.
Wait a minute.
Having a look.
If that's the case, if I've just suggested Varuna, the god of the water, then that means we've actually got 2 Neptunes, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
So,
Indra. Indra would be the Hindu god of the sky, according to my single Google.
Well, then let's do that. Indra.
yeah.
Indra's nice.
Sky, lightning, weather, thunderstorms, rain, river flows, and war.
I mean, if we,
Hell yeah.
if they're always and war. all the gods, not just Hindu
Because
gods.
Uranus.
Essentially.
Yeah.
But I mean, if that's something we care about, like, does it need to like keep its semantics? But I mean, Indra sounds fine as well. I don't know. Maybe we don't.
I like them both. Okay. We'll have a Twitter poll and we'll report on that for our next bonus
But
episode.
I do think that the reason, like, stop sniggering in astronomy class, I don't agree with the premise that
That's a dumb reason.
that is what we need
That's
to
a dumb
do.
reason.
That sounds like it's just bringing
We
joy
need
to people.
sniggering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, my
you're right.
husband may or may not have written a comedy song related to this.
Oh,
Ah.
what a cut up.
So can't really throw him under the bus.
Well, just get him to learn Sanskrit, and then he can do a hilarious, like, I don't know, like a ribald series of japes about it in Sanskrit, and it'll be great.
Yeah, see, doing puns on Uranus is really easy, and everyone's done them. But Varuna or Indra, this is new territory. We could make a song about that. And now it's time for the Oxford game, or as we call it, yeah, nah, or nah, yeah. I give you two words, and you have to tell me if they're related or if the similarity between them is merely coincidental. Our etymological information, as always, comes straight from our sponsors, the Oxford English Dictionary, the definitive record of the English language.
The Thinking Person's Dictionary.
You sound pensive when you say that. Wow.
Well, I
good
was
reading,
about to say
Ben.
the Thinking Man's Dictionary. I was like, well, that is not an appropriate thing to say anymore.
Hmm. Our patrons on Discord are having lots of fun proposing their own pairs of words. This has turned out to be a very popular game on our Discord.
Ooh, good. And look, less work for you. Win-win.
Well, I had a question about this one in my mind. As always, I wonder these things throughout the day and think, oh, that'd be a good one. Let's look it up. Sometimes it's a yeah, nah. Sometimes it's a yeah, nah. Nah, yeah. Yeah, nah. So
nah.
this one,
Yeah.
this iteration of the Oxford game is about a single word with two senses, and the word is toast. One is proposing a toast, and the other is hot buttered toast. Are they related or are they not?
Oh, no.
Thoughts?
Nah, yeah.
Ben thinks perhaps they are related.
Yep.
What's your thinking?
I have the vaguest of memories of some kind of habit or custom from a long time ago that involved dinner tables and people holding up pieces of bread.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember where I remember this from. I could be completely mistaken and manufacturing this out of thin fucking air. But I seem to recall some sort of thing where people, like the bread of the table was used in some kind of custom or cultural practice.
So they held it up in the air.
Yeah, like holding it up in the air or people stopping and listening, something like that.
And they said, I propose toast. And then they all said,
I don't think that ever happened. I think
This
what
is
happened
stupid. We
was
should be drinking something.
there was a slight similarity and somehow it crossed over. That's
so
that's my thinking.
Ben thinks that maybe, yeah. Hedvig, what do you think?
Toast. Well, so like the verb to toast, as in like toasting the croutons or something like that, like needs to like apply heat,
Yes.
right? And then there's the like what we call the object nominalization, the toast, that the bread that is from the action of doing that. So what I'm now thinking is there's three things. There's the verb to apply heat, there's the verb to do a cheers, and there's a noun, the bread. But I think Ben is right that the connection is between the bread and the action of doing it. I know, yeah.
Okay, you both think that they are related. By the way, I love the verb to cheers. We were cheersing all night long.
Yeah.
I just think that's fantastic.
Do a cheer.
It's great. It's not very often that interjections become verbs. Anyway, here we go. The correct answer from the Oxford English Dictionary. You're both correct. They are related.
Okay, now tell us how.
This is fun. So the hot bread sense comes from about the 1400s, toasting bread. And then the to your health sense, the Oxford English Dictionary says that it is a figurative application of toast, that is to say, a person. You know how we say that somebody is the toast of the town or the toast of the ball?
Oh, like toast is a good thing.
Yeah, because if somebody is the toast, The OED says that this is like a lady being supposed to flavor a bumper. Oh, I need to explain that word. So a bumper.
Oh, Jesus, this is going deep. Okay.
It's going deep. A bumper is a drink, an alcoholic drink filled to the brim like for a toast.
Okay.
And let's just say a lady flavors a party just like toast flavors your drink. You see, believe it or not,
What?
people
Wait.
used to...
Toast flavors drink.
Yes. Now,
Okay.
here's the link. People used to combine their beer or their ale with hot bread. You'd have some beer or some ale, and you would stick a piece of toast in there, because who doesn't love crumbs in their drink?
Oh, not nice. This is jellied eel shit. I'm not on board.
So already there's toast in your drink, all right?
Mhm.
You get a piece of hot bread sticking in your drink. And when people would have this drink with their toast in it, they would stand around with these cups of soggy bread and they would make long speeches. So you might make a long speech to a lady about how beautiful she was, and you'd be toasting her because
You're
she would be the
right.
toast in that party. She was making the party good, just like your toast makes the drink good. So she's the toast.
That is a fucked up and bizarre connection. This is so much weirder than I ever would
Yeah.
have thought.
So then the meaning jumped from the piece of toast that you stick in your drink to the lady who is like the toast. And then it jumped again to the act of holding up a drink. They are related.
Wow.
And by the way, toasting has another sense in Jamaican music. You're aware of this one?
Nope.
Oh, toasting is like a rap that you do in the middle of a song.
Okay.
And that's related too, because it gets its meaning from that long speech that you would make to a lady while you're holding up your salty bread in a cup.
Right.
Nice.
So that's the relationship. We call toasting toast because people used to stick toast in their drink. They are related.
So
Go.
there is a custom in Scandinavian countries of dipping bread into broth or the juices from steak.
Oh, sure.
Yes.
Like, I don't think that's just Scandinavian countries, right? Like,
And I just looked it up, and apparently that's called sop.
Sop, S-O-P, that's right.
in English, yeah.
And that is where we get the word supper from.
Right.
Oh, to sup up your right.
Mhm.
Okay.
So we call another
yeah.
word for Christmas is the dipping day,
Really?
because that is the day that you do the thing. And then we just
Right.
count.
Is that like an
Okay.
archaic word, or do you guys regularly say
well,
that to
people
each
still
other?
say that. And like the day before Christmas is the day before the dipping day. And the day before that is the day before the
Right.
day before the dipping day. And people can like
Dipping Day Eve? Would that be the...
Dan för dopparedan is like a saying.
Fantastic.
But that's
Fantastic.
It's
not
always good when
beer.
the actual Swedish gets busted out, because it really does sound a lot like the Swedish chef to people who don't speak Swedish.
And
Stop it.
while we're speaking
Stop
of medieval liquids, I was
Yes.
listening to a documentary on YouTube about sex in medieval times. And I learned that there is a connection. Maybe Daniel can look it up if it's actually true, between broth and brothel.
That's
Oh
next
my
week's.
gosh.
That's next week's.
Well, so
Okay.
I heard that it
Do
is true, and I'm pretty sure that it is. So I don't know if it can be a quiz,
Okay.
because it would only be if Ben is convinced by me.
Hey, look, I'm skeptical AF of a lot of the shit you say. So
Okay.
I'm gonna go with
Okay,
Let's do it.
brothel.
Also, YouTube documentaries, very, very significantly in their rigor, and like some of them are like the greatest things I've ever seen, and some of them I'm like, oof, you really can just be anyone and upload a thing, can't
But
you?
this was by a really good medieval historian, Going Medieval on Twitter, who's I respect. She has a PhD in it.
Okay.
By the way, Ben, we had a talk a while ago about fanging it, and we thought that maybe because fang meant to hang on to something, that when you fang it, you have to hang on, and that's why it's called fanging it.
Yep.
But apparently it's not. It's somebody's name. It's
Okay.
possibly a race car driver, Juan Miguel Fangio.
Oh, there we go.
And I learned that because I found it in the OED. There's just so much information in the Oxford English Dictionary. Check your institution, check your local library to see if they have access online, or become a subscriber yourself. Head to our website to see how you can do that. If you go to our website and click through, they'll know it's from us. But the Oxford English Dictionary sponsors the show and the definitive record of the English language. Thanks to them for being sponsors of the show.
You can play your own little game of yeah, nah, or nah, yeah, because you can think to yourself, I wonder if those things are related. And then you can go to the place where the Oxford English Dictionary is, possibly even your own very home, and be like, holy shitballs, they are related.
Yep. Or they're not. Yeah.
Or not.
No. All right, we are here with Dr. Hannah Little. Hannah, thanks for coming on the show and talking to us today.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here.
It's so fun to have you on because we share a lot of interest in common. Not only have we met a few times, and I would like to call us friends, maybe. I don't know.
Yes, we're
It's a bit
friends.
presumptuous, Hedwig.
And I like you, but I also know that you're into stand-up and comedy and sci-fi and cool things and linguistics and all these things at once. So it's really fun to have you on.
All these things at once is my favourite thing.
And you're working on a book, are you not?
I am, yes. Yeah. Very close to 50,000 words now. That's almost a book, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
How long does the book have to be? Who says it needs to be a certain length?
Well, I think publishers say that it needs to be a certain length, but I think non-fiction books are typically around 50 to 65,000. But the thing is that I'm nearly at 50,000, but I'm nowhere near finished. So there might need to be quite a substantial amount of editing happening at some point.
Oh, that's hard.
Right.
All right, so what's this book about?
It's about science fiction and linguistics, but specifically it's about all of the ways that science fiction has influenced linguistic research. Because quite often when you say sci-fi and linguistics, people think about conlanging, so constructed languages, things like Klingon, Na'vi from Avatar, and all the ones from Games of Thrones.
Sure.
But people, there's a lot of examples of where science fiction stories have directly influenced empirical research that's been happening in linguistics, especially over the last 10, 20 years.
I have never heard of this. I'm going to need some examples here.
Yeah, because usually we hear of the opposite, like linguists working as consultants for sci-fi TV shows or something. But you're saying that the sci-fi authors are having an effect on linguistics.
Yeah, so I think, this happens, I've lost count of the number of times I've been at a linguistics conference and somebody started with an example from science fiction, whether that's people, sometimes it's look at this example and how horrific it is as a representation. The thing that springs directly to mind is there's a Next Generation episode, Star Trek Next Generation episode called Loud as a Whisper, which was one of the earliest representations of American Sign Language on screen.
Ooh, I think I know which one it is.
But the whole episode cuts out most of the sign language.
Yes.
And the way that they talk about sign languages within the episode is really bad, because they're all acting as if they've never heard of such a thing as a sign language before, despite the majority of the Enterprise being from Earth that, famously has quite a lot of them.
Oh no,
Yeah.
how exotic, how obscure.
Maybe like I could accept like that no Klingons or Romulans or whatever, that there are no deaf Klingons. Like, I don't know, like fine, whatever, maybe they, but you're right. The Federation is primarily a Earth human thing. So they should be aware of that.
Yeah, and they have really advanced translation technologies on the Enterprise. They have the Universal Translator that can't deal with sign languages. And you would have
Right.
thought that the linguists who developed that would have thought at some point, oh, there's a whole class of languages on Earth. Maybe some aliens out there might use visual forms of communication and not just have spoken
Yeah.
language.
It's in the update.
Do you think that implies that within the Star Trek Federation world that there are no deaf people, that people get cochlear implant when they're born that are super duper accurate, or do you think
They forgot.
Yeah,
They forgot.
So there's lots of examples in Star Trek where they, within the world of one episode, it contradicts itself several series later. So I wouldn't like to say what current kind of Star Trek Discovery world would how that would represent deaf individuals, but certainly within that episode, that was the implication. But there's been some really lovely representations of deaf sign language users recently in sci-fi. There's a character in The Eternals and also one in Hawkeye, Marvel's Hawkeye, if people have seen that. Although I have a gripe with Eternals, which is that one of the Eternals is deaf and uses American Sign Language, but there's scenes that are from like 5000 BC where she's using American Sign Language, which is only really 200 years old. But also they're using spoken American English, which I don't think they had in 5000 BC.
That's the same
enough.
problem. At least that's the same problem, right?
Yeah. But that is me being a pedant. But we have gone off what the original question was, which was examples of how science fiction's influenced linguistic thinking. So my PhD is actually in evolutionary linguistics, so how our ancestors first started to negotiate communication systems and went from a status of having no language to having language.
Aliens.
Well,
I had to. Sorry.
There is theories that it was aliens, and also theories that it was magic mushrooms.
I've heard that one.
Yeah.
Oh, that there's also theories that magic mushrooms are the origin of religion.
Ooh, is it the same guy, Terence McKenna, who's...
I don't know, but it's the idea that like psychedelic substances in nature give people out-of-body experiences, and that's how they start thinking about like the beyond. Anyway.
Didn't say a word, but then once you get some shrooms into him, suddenly they can't shut up. I've heard it and heard it.
But one thing that a lot of experimental work in evolutionary linguistics does is use what I'd call first contact scenarios. So the idea is that you've landed on an alien planet, you need to communicate with these aliens. How do you go about doing it? Because that's very, very similar to the scenario of you are a humanoid ancestor who doesn't have language and you want to work out how to communicate with these other people that don't have language. It's not a perfect metaphor because the aliens potentially have language and I have language if I go and land on an alien planet.
And the first humans might share things that aren't language with each other.
Yeah. Yes, which makes things like iconicity very easy because you can iconically represent things via gesture or even vocalizations to communicate something if you know you have that.
You can imitate the thing that you're trying to communicate.
Yeah. But the thing that's nice about the alien example is that if you are in a situation where you don't have a very rich awareness of the shared knowledge between you and the shared linguistic apparatus and even notions of what a language looks like or what a language should be, you start kind of going back to first principles in terms of, right, what do you need to build that communication? And then that leads us into a space where we can start thinking about what's possible. And a lot of evolutionary linguistics, because language doesn't fossilize, so we've got written languages for a few thousand years, but before that, we've got very little idea of what came before because it doesn't fossilize.
Yeah.
It's very speculative, right? A lot of it's modeling, computational modeling or experimental modeling. And it's just, right, what's the most likely scenario that we have about how we came from point X of no language to point Y of language. And what's going to happen next? What's point Z?
Yeah. People love to ask that.
Yeah.
We were interviewed, me and Daniel, by this translating agency, and they were asking us, like, as linguists, what do you think is going to happen next in language change? And we're like, fuck if we know. Yeah, so Hannah, you know.
I don't know.
Yeah, you've done this.
But science fiction authors love to ask this question. What's next? Where are we going next?
What are they saying?
Well, in universal translators, the big one that comes to mind, that there's been a lot of work trying to crack that. And translation technologies that we currently have are pretty good for languages that we have a lot of data for. But of course, the vast majority of languages on Earth don't have a lot of data just hanging out on the internet. I think I was reading an article earlier that said that it was like of the 110 languages spoken on Facebook, and I was like, that's such a tiny proportion of the languages on Earth.
Yeah, for sure.
And no, they're the languages that Facebook are bothered about. But we're getting more and more towards systems that can reliably translate languages with less and less data, right? Which is really exciting.
The whole zero shot, no training translation.
Yeah. Which is what you see in Star Trek, right? With the universal translator.
That is.
They come across a new alien species and somehow the translator just can tackle it unless it's a sign language, as we've already discussed.
Well, not then.
Or
the
Temerian.
metaphor.
Yeah.
The metaphor
Darmok
people.
and
Galad
at Tanagra, yeah.
It failed on the Temerian stuff.
So I have a question about the universal translator and about what you just said.
I've got a lot of questions.
So a friend told me a story that there's this, like, Warhammer? There's supposed to be a place in Warhammer, because in the Warhammer 40,000 or 40k world, it's like the far future where technology has become sort of incomprehensible to people, so it's understood as religion or magic. So they have all this like super duper advanced technology, but they don't really know how it works. So they think that they need like priests on their ships to say prayers in order to fly into space.
Yeah.
They've ritualized it. Anyway, there's this place where there's an old portal that is a universal translator, and there's town around it. And the portal keeps working, even though no one knows how it works. And anyone who goes there can immediately understand anyone else. My question is, what happens if you're born there?
We have had this as a question. Didn't we tackle this one? Somebody asked this once in a mailbag. Yeah. So what if you're born there and thinking is essentially your first language? Does it read your thoughts, or if you speak a certain different way from standard, whatever the language is, will it do the equivalent in the target language, or is it reading your thoughts and giving you what the example that we had was, what if you don't know the word for something and you say defenestration? The word defenestration has been coming up a lot.
For those who don't know, it means to throw someone out a window.
Right. What if you don't know what defenestration is, and then it's like, oh, I defenestrated Tom the other day, and they don't know what that is. What do they hear? Do they hear the equivalent of defenestrated, or do they hear the equivalent of threw somebody out of a window? What does the universal translator do? Is it reading thoughts, or is it just translating things straight?
Well, it depends what sci-fi you're reading, because in Star Trek... But again, the story keeps changing, because in the original series they said, it takes brain waves and then translates them, because in one episode they found this like flashing rock, which the universal translator was really struggling with the flashing rock, and then eventually it managed to translate it, and it was calling the crew giant bags of giant bags of ugly water or something.
Because
which is true. Which is true.
But then the explanation was that it was giving off brainwaves which could be translated. But in Farscape, the way that universal translation works in Farscape is that there's this bacteria that attaches itself to people's brain stems, and it translates incoming messages, but it doesn't affect whether you can speak other people's languages. So in that scenario...
That's the same as babelfishes.
Yeah. So in that scenario, I suppose you'd have to have a native language before it would work.
Right. Yeah, the question, I guess, is like, is it distributed like telepathy, or is it translating two languages to each other?
Yeah.
Which a lot of sci-fi authors aren't always clear about.
Yeah, because universal translators are basically used in science fiction as a tool to get rid of the problem of thinking about really interesting linguistic questions.
Exactly. And it's so persuasive, like, for example, in Star Trek, which of course we're going to talk about a lot because they've done so many things, like Jean-Luc Picard, who is canonically French, goes to France and sits down with his family and his brother. And they all continue to speak English, not even with a French accent. And it's just like, I don't know. Yeah, I think you're right. Like, the reason why the universal translates in so many sci-fi movies is because they want to have a show in English.
Yeah, because Jean-Luc Picard is canonically speaking French the whole time. to everyone.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
And the show ruins that.
Yeah.
This whole thing just weirds me out. Like his lips should have been moving differently, but instead he speaks English, and the lip movements are English. Does the universal translator translate lip movements as well? Does it make me see things differently as well as hear things differently?
Yeah, because then the aliens would all be having different movements. And I would assume, actually, that most of the aliens wouldn't be even using spoken language, because why should they? So you'd imagine they should be doing all sorts of things to communicate that would be then translated into your language of choice.
Hannah, have you read Becky Chambers?
I started, the Angry is it the small...
A Far Way to a Small Angry Planet, and then there's two more.
Yeah. And the talk
you
boxes.
can read them any order, but they're in the same universe. There's a species there that have spoken language, and they talk to each other. But they have an extra communication channel, which is like they have this part of their face. This, I think it's on their cheeks, that can flash different colors.
Mm-hmm.
And it can signal like if they're being sarcastic or loving or angry or upset, or like their tone. It's sort of like the intonation a bit.
Or facial expression, really.
Yeah.
I was thinking, I think faces do that.
But the characters in the novel kept saying, yeah, you humans think it's like facial expression or intonation, but actually it's like, it's more than that. It's something more. And they're like, yeah, we can speak to you, but like we find it weird, but we will. It's like they don't have a problem with like transferring basic information, but they're just like, it's almost like when people in sci-fi show talk about like ascending in intelligence until you become like a god. It's sort of like that. They're like, yeah, you guys are using this like kindergarten language, fine, and we can communicate with you on that, but actually this is other thing going on. I thought that was kind of cute. That was more fun. So maybe if we, because I'm going to keep talking about Star Trek if no one stops me. What are some other fun things that sci-fi authors do? Or maybe we should get back to what you originally started talking about before we went off tangents on Universal Translator, which was how sci-fi authors have influenced linguists.
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of thought experiment. I mean, another thing that comes to mind is Sapir-Whorf. People talk about that a lot in relationship to sci-fi, and
it formed the basis of one very influential sci-fi film about aliens making contact.
Arrival.
Naturally, we had a thing where the team went to an actual screening of Arrival when it was in theaters with some of our listeners and friends. And then we had a big old chat about it afterwards. Like, why do we like Sapir-Whorf so much? The idea that language influences thought. But what we came up with was that the idea that language influences your thought seems kind of magical. And when you're in the sci-fi world, magical is good. And we like it.
It feels magical, but it also feels intuitive, right? I think.
A lot of people do. Yeah. We fight that intuition hard, don't we? As linguists.
Well, it's just so in last episode we were talking about this experiment. Now it's a bit of a party pooper, but it was this experiment where people were counting things, and if they didn't have that many numerals in their individual language, they couldn't count as far doing these counting tasks. And I couldn't help being like, yeah, but maybe that's got nothing to do with whether they have numerals or not. Maybe that has got to do with like how often they count things.
Yeah.
If you don't count things often, you don't have many numerals and you're not good at counting.
That's right.
And there's no reason that it's the language. You know what I mean?
I mean, the language is available. The language does have numbers on up to 100, but not everyone uses them. And so if you start making mistakes, it could not be because you don't have the language available. It could just be that you're in uncharted territory for you. This is not something you do a lot. And we don't know how to tease that apart.
Do you know what I mean?
It reminds me of when I was a kid, my best friend was Hungarian, and her family used to take me to Hungary during the summer because they'd go there every summer to visit their family, and just take me with them. But I was a vegetarian. I still am a vegetarian, but as a child I was. They didn't have a word for vegetarian at the time.
Oh, no.
But also, I tried, with my rubbish Hungarian, tried to explain what vegetarianism is. And also my friend who speaks Hungarian tried to explain. But frequently, I would be given things that I would not consider to be part of a vegetarian diet. And then I remembered when I was 16, I went and her granddad came running out the house and said, Hannah, we've got a word for vegetarian. And I was just like, hallelujah. Because it felt like this magical thing that I could unlock an explanation of what this diet was, because it felt like it was unexplainable to people without the word. But I know that Hungarians are capable of conceiving a vegetarian diet and describing one. They have the language to do it. But it felt like the word was the thing. And I think that's just because of the frequency of encountering it as a concept improves your understanding of it, in the same way, what you're saying, that frequency of counting to a specific number would improve your ability to
count.
it.
Who knows? Like, doing things and encountering things make you have more experience with them.
Yeah. But there's loads of sci-fi that discusses this. I mean, 1984 is the other obvious example, except for Arrival, where people's thought is restricted by what they can put into language.
My favourite one is Babel 17.
Oh, yeah.
In which not only does it restrict what you can conceive of, but in that one, you can essentially sort of program people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's the same thing in Snow Crash, if you've read that, by Neil Stephenson.
No, I haven't.
I have, but it was a long time ago. What happens there?
So it's in ancient times, there's this, people get programmed with this specific language, which almost acts as a virus, and then somebody kind of creates an antivirus software for this language, which enables people like them to free up their thought and ability to have different languages and therefore different thoughts. So it's a play on the whole Babel myth, where God came down and said, right, I confound your language, you can all spread across the earth and speak different languages. And I always think it's funny that in the Bible that's framed as like a punishment, that God's punishing us for trying to reach
with
heaven.
language diversity.
Yeah, exactly. But
for the sin of cooperation.
in Snow Crash, it's almost framed like it's a thing that freed us to be able to think more freely and in different ways, which I think is a much nicer frame of it.
Yeah, I like that. It makes you wonder, sort of, because maybe I have a basic linguistic relativism anti-stance, just because I'm a cynical person who doesn't believe in neat explanations, and it's usually something else. But sometimes it makes me think, I mainly think and speak Swedish and English, and they're quite similar. And, maybe there is things that I don't think about so much. But, yeah. The other day, it took me over 24 hours to remember a very particular cultural specific word from my region in Sweden. And it felt weird. Because I knew what the thing was.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
It was strange to you.
Yeah, it's actually, it's not a very romantic word. It's like if you have a cigarette, and you smoke half of it, and then you put it out and you save the other half. Mm-hmm. That has a different word than if it's finished.
What is the word for that in English?
You don't have one.
I don't
I
think
guess
we have
not.
one.
You call the thing butt, like a cigarette butt.
Yeah, that's the end.
Maybe it'd just be an unfinished butt.
Yeah.
Do we just smoke the whole thing? Is that why we don't have this? But
no, I think you have equal amounts of poor teenagers.
If not more.
If not more. Maybe. Yeah. Anyway, but it made me feel like I lost a connection to a world, and then when I thought of it, I was like, oh yeah. And it felt like you were saying about vegetarianism, like it felt it did feel different remembering the word, even though I could conceive of the concept.
I feel like we're talking about different things lexically. That feels like one area, but then like having the morphology of your language, like what suffixes you have, influence how much money is in your bank account, or how likely you are to be for equal rights for women, or something like that. That feels like a whole different territory. Feels like we could get behind a bit of Whorfianism in the lexicon, but when it comes to the spooky stuff, we go, that's not a thing. Or maybe we go, that the whole thing isn't a thing.
Well, I think the whole thing's a thing, but only a tiny bit. That's how I feel. That
okay.
But I don't know, because it is, all of the examples that we've ever had of Whorfianism tend to be, well, not all of them, because there's the ability to intuitively know where north, south, east, and west is, depending on what words you use for directions. And that's a reliable finding. And that feels a bit Whorfian, because it's influencing your cognition of the world.
Or is it practice, once again? You know, we keep hitting this. The universe in which it's language looks exactly like the universe in which it's practice. And I don't know how to separate those two.
Yeah, it's tricky. Daniel, in last episode, you also talked about like Dutch kids and English kids and counting, because Dutch kids and English kids grow up in fairly comparable. But then again, it could be that like in Dutch daycares, they don't practice counting as much as in English daycares. Like,
But the idea was that in English we say 24, but in Dutch they say 420. And they asked the kids to do 2-digit addition, and the English-speaking kids did way better, even accounting for factors like age and education.
Right.
But why should the order have an effect on that?
Because you have to... I mean, now I'm learning German and I'm trying to...
It's 24. So if you...
Yeah. And then you add 2...
Is it still the case when you get up to the 80s or 70s? Is it still reversed? Because if it flips, then that would... Oh, okay.
But it flips for 100, right?
Yeah, it's
100 for... Yeah.
124, so then it would be 142 rather than 124.
Yeah.
For 124.
Yeah, that's the same in German.
I keep getting this question about what would alien languages be like. And I'm sure that you've got a lot of reading on that. And I keep thinking, well, okay, we don't know what their language would be like, but we can take some guesses as to, based on what communication must be like. Like, for example, they'd probably keep their adjectives and their nouns pretty close together. They'd say either red house or house red, but if they had those things, they probably wouldn't say house blah, 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 red, because that, from an information theoretic perspective, that makes it easier. And what I get back is, well, what if they have super good working memory? Then it's not a problem. Oh, dang it. Okay, so their language doesn't have to... I guess my assumption about that was probably wrong, based on that assumption.
I mean, we even have human languages that do that, right?
Yes.
A bunch of Australian indigenous languages do discontinuous numerals, where they have the noun phrases where they have the adjective intersecting, like not in the same phrase as the noun.
There's been some work on long-distance dependencies, but yeah, that could totally be something that happens.
Yeah. What do you think, Hannah?
Yeah, because it's really, really unsatisfying to say they could literally look like anything.
It is. I really... I try to avoid saying that whenever I can.
But I find that quite a lot of the discourse around what assumptions can we make about language universally, including alien ones, all of it seems a little bit like it's justifying the choices that science fiction authors have made to say that we can assume that they probably have words for cooperation and war and peace and these concepts that we think of as being as concepts that you would necessarily have to have in order to have a sufficiently intelligent species to negotiate a language, but also negotiate space travel, assuming that you'd need space travel for us to ever find them and speak to them.
There's even insane assumptions. There's like an original series Star Trek episode which they later contradict, where they say that masculine and feminine are universal concepts.
Yeah.
Because they encountered this like sentient gas cloud. And Kirk is like, ooh, this is a woman.
Of course,
Not only
Kirk.
is it a woman, but it's also a heterosexual woman who is in love with a human man.
Makes out with him. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I find the ones that you said now, Hannah, like conflict cooperation, I find more plausible than masculine feminine.
Yeah. Because even looking at the species on Earth, that you find loads of animals that have no binary sex or very fluid binary sex, that you can, like, even amongst insects and things that can change sex and do all sorts of fancy things.
Or among humans, yeah.
And among humans.
Yeah. No, it's fun.
You wouldn't need to have a word for war or the concept war. For example, you had groups of people with limited telepathy. So wars happen, among other reasons, when we're not sure what somebody's going to do, but we think that they might be hostile. So we prepare for war. If you had limited telepathy, and I could see that you had good intentions toward me, but not much else, or I could feel that you had bad intentions toward me, then I could take the appropriate action.
So that, or a language where it's impossible to lie, like in Embassy Town.
Tell me about that one.
Well, so there's a concept of language in Embassy Town, which is just stylized with a capital L, where it's impossible to lie. So it's just basically like telepathy that you externalize.
Can you choose to not say things?
Yeah. But even within fiction where they have telepathy and you can... So like in Chaos Walking by Patrick Ness, which is a film now, the characters can see each other's thoughts, and it's called noise. Or hear it, experience each other's noise. But that you can control your noise, right? Some people are better at it than others. But it's a really weird concept, like to have telepathy without the ability to control it. That who would be able to cope?
But that's the other thing, is like, when we talked about the conflict and cooperation, what if, the other species live in a hive corporation Borg-like community, where there's no word for war or cooperation really, because within the community you never have any conflict. No one ever has any bad intentions towards each other. And if you encounter someone who's not of your community, you famously try to make them a part of your community, because that's the only way you understand the world. Then you wouldn't have, I don't think the Borg really have a word for... They have a word for, like, resistance, which is famously futile. But I'm not sure they have a word for war or invasion or anything like that, because...
If only we could ask them.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But would we understand? Well, I guess we would with the Universal Translator. So tell me about the chapters in the book. How have you divided this up so far?
So I divided it up into 3 parts. The first part is all about our evolutionary past and biology. So we go through animal communication systems, different modalities for communication and what they look like, the genetic basis for language, and the X-Men theory of language, and whether it all came about at once as a result of one mutation or whether it was small incremental steps.
Ooh, I know this one.
And also about neurology in the brain. Then the middle section's all about culture and language contact, language diversity, language change, and how things are changing now in present day human languages and what we know about them. And then the last part is all about the future and linguistic technologies and where they're going and what science fiction can teach us about that. Yeah.
That sounds a good division. Good plan for a book.
Yeah.
I want to ask one more question. You are a linguist. You are also a science communicator. What's the right way to do linguistics communication? Or if there's no right way because it's individualized, then, what good things have you noticed people doing? What should everyone be emulating?
So I think it depends massively on what your objectives are. So
Okay.
there's actually, I just wrote a chapter for a book that's coming about linguistics and public engagement, published by Routledge, edited by Hazel Price and Dan McIntyre, who's at Huddersfield. And there's loads and loads of lovely examples in that. So every chapter's another example of some project that people are doing. But I wrote one of the earlier chapters, which is very, very broad and about this question of what makes good linguistic communication or research communication about linguistics. And in it, I'm just talking about how you boil down, working out what your objective is, which audiences does your objective relate to, and how can you go about reaching that audience where they're at? Because I think that the mistake that a lot of people make is trying to do things for the general public, and they start too broad. But of course, the general public is made up of 3-year-olds, 90-year-olds. It's made up of your nan and your nephew and somebody that you've never met on the other side of the world who likes completely different things to you.
Yeah.
And so as long as you're being honest with yourself about who you're reaching, because I imagine because language reaches linguistics nerds, right? That's who listens to it. That's who signs up to the Patreon. It's people like me who really, really love linguistics and want to hear about linguistics. And you engage them with discussions about that. But people who don't know what linguistics is are very unlikely to find your podcast and listen to it. People who know what it is, but they just could not care less, they would not listen to it either. And that's fine, right? That's totally fine. I really, really like initiatives that embed research communication into culture. So I think the reason I really, really got into this science fiction thing is because science fiction is part of culture, right? And it has a huge nerdy following, but I think that this nerdy following is getting bigger and bigger. All of the kind of top ranking films of the past year, or for the last 10 years, the top ones are all science fiction. They're all Marvels, superhero films, big blockbuster science fiction, right? And I think people often think sci-fi is really niche and nerdy. And
it's so not. And also sci-fi
so
nerds think it is. And they're like, oh, we're like the underdog of culture. And it's like, have you seen what movies are raking in money?
Yeah.
You're not a minority.
So I think that's a really nice, because it's so mainstream and there's so many people interested in it, it's such a nice vehicle to start these conversations about linguistic research by kind of saying, right, what's behind the linguistics of Star Trek, of Star Wars, of the Marvel films, of Arrival. But there's lots to be said even about the ones that aren't the obvious ones, like Arrival. So yeah, I think that was a very long-winded but broad answer.
No, I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense. And I think in general, not only when it comes to science communication, but overall in a lot of things you do in life in general, it's good to truly understand who your audience, who you're speaking to. And that goes for like a dialogue you just have with one other person to when I write code. So like when I write our code, I try and think about like, is it me who's going to use it a year from now, or is it someone else? And how does that make a difference? And also scientific articles you write for different journals or different audiences. It's always good. And you're right, like in our podcast, we think that our audience, and we do service of our audience, and we know that they have a certain amount of linguistics knowledge usually already. They might not know all the terms or all the latest things, and that's fine. Why would they? Why would we? You know? But yeah, we do start from a certain place, and I think that's really good advice generally for communication broadly, any communication. So, Dr. Little, what is something that you want our audience to know about the future of language?
What I want people to know about the future of, I don't know, because I think one interesting thing, because we were talking about universal translators at the beginning, which I think is where the really interesting space is, because I think it kind of gets to this question you had about how would you learn language in this instance of there being the presence of a universal translator, and whether the future of language, people ask this a lot, whether the future of language is that we all just end up speaking the same language, or
Right.
if Universal Translator would facilitate further diversification of language because it would reduce the need to have people being multilingual and also speaking different languages with different people because the computer would do it all for you.
Mm-hmm. You can just speak your own individual Google Gaga, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, and I don't know the answer to that, but I think it's a really interesting question.
Makes you very sensitive. So if the Romulans or Martians or whatever knock out your universal translator or spread a virus that kills the baby fish or the bacteria or whatever, you're sort of fucked.
Yeah. And not all science fiction shows resolve the issue of people needing to understand each other via something like a universal translator. So The Expanse has Belter Creole, so in the Belt, which is the outer regions of the solar system where a lot of people live, called the Belters, but they all come from different parts of Earth and Mars, and so they need a universal language. Well, just like Creoles come about in the real world, they need a language to be able to communicate with each other for purposes of trade and things. So they have Belter Creole, which I think's a much more elegant and realistic solution in that universe than just kind of having either a kind of universal lingua franca or a common tongue, which is another frequent trope that you see in science fiction where everybody just speaks English. All of these lingua francas always look exactly like English, which is quite serendipitous. Instead you'd have something that's a functional language that facilitates these language contact situations.
Yeah, I think in terms of human future, if we don't factor in aliens, that is much more realistic.
I agree. Dr. Hannah Little, thanks for being with us. How can people find out what you're doing?
You can go to my website, hlittle.com, but I'm also on Twitter at Hanachronism, which is spelled with an H and then the word anachronism, which is not how you spell Hannah, but yeah, you'll be able to find me.
Very good. We'll have a link on our website, becauselanguage.com. Now we're to the words of the week, and we got a bunch. The first one suggested by Diego. Guess what this is? Red COVID.
Oh, tell me it's not another variant. I really don't want it to be another variant.
When I saw this, I thought, I don't know what this is, but I'm not going to like it.
Yeah, this bodes ill.
No, it's not a new variant of COVID.
Okay, good.
Is it?
We'll get those anyway.
Is it like Red October, Red COVID somehow?
Not related to Red October.
Okay. Oh, hang on. Is it related to the Republican Party somehow?
Why, yes, it is.
Okay, so red is their color. Red COVID is Is this to do with the general fatigue people are experiencing around Republican bullshit?
You're hitting around it here.
Okay.
Diego has pointed us to an article by Eric Ting in sfgate.com. This refers to the way that deaths from COVID are correlated county by county in California to voting tendencies, and one presumes how Republican a county is. The Republican voting ones, or the red ones, are suffering way more excess deaths than the Democratic-leaning ones.
Okay. I mean,
unsurprisingly.
That intuitively makes sense given all of the rampant. And here's the thing, not just anti-vax, but also anti-mask and all of the other, like anti-closure, all of the other protective factors that were being rolled out and potentially still could be rolled out. Yeah, I guess that makes a horrible, morbid sort of sense.
Now, we on Because Language have a very strong policy that nobody should ever die for any reason, ever, ever, ever.
Immortality for all, obviously.
Do you know that someone has not that opinion?
Really?
What?
Well, so...
Someone doesn't believe immortality for all?
Wow, spicy take.
You know Bolsonaro?
Who?
Bolsonaro.
Oh,
Brazilian.
Yeah, the leader of Brazil. Yeah.
Oh.
The Trumpy
yes.
guy.
He said in interviews, apparently, that, like, we shouldn't be scared of death. And, like, it's fine to die. And, like, COVID and stuff aren't really problems because strong people don't die and People who die, it's fine. It's just a pure fascism.
For those who have never encountered this man, he is a level of crank that is pretty rare to come across. Like, he is willing to say things out loud.
Just bizarre.
This is the same guy who said things like, I would rather my son die in a car accident than be gay. He said that openly, publicly at like a stump speech. Like, this dude is off the chain.
He's also said that like one of the problems with the military junta that was before in Brazil was that like they didn't kill enough people.
Yeah, they didn't go far enough.
Death culture is so weird. Yeah, it seems that before the vaccine was available, there wasn't much of a difference. And in fact, remember that the Trump administration was happy to do nothing about COVID because they thought it would attack blue state cities most heavily. For a while, there wasn't really any correlation between political inclination in the U.S. counties and COVID deaths. But Eric Ting reports that after the vaccine became widely available, it very strongly skewed toward Trump won counties versus Biden won counties.
There we go. I mean, that's awful and terrible. And I'm unlike the Queen, where I was willing to go pretty hard. This is just a situation where all these people dying fucking sucks. And there have been people who could have prevented a lot of that, and for their own political gain decided to just sow dissent and disinformation and division rather than just try and save people's lives. And those people should be fucking shot into the sun, basically. But the people in these counties who have died because people gave them bad information and because of like echo chambers and all the rest of the stupid bullshit that we have at the moment, that's really sad. And I'm really bummed out about that.
Yeah, I've been wrong before, and it really sucks that this time the consequences for being wrong is dying. Because, you know, in the end, we're really all in this together, even if they might not think so.
Yeah, it's really fucked.
Okay, so Red COVID. We got two more here. Diginim and Wi-Fi Tribe.
Diginom.
Oh,
did I write Digi? Yeah, it's supposed to be Diginom. Do you want to guess what Diginom is?
Is it fucking tragic that the only thing I can think of now that you've said Diginom is Digimon?
Of course, yeah.
Is that
That's why it's funny, but it's not
digital monsters.
Yeah, it's not that.
My son was digging through all his old crap in his room yesterday, and he found all these Yu-Gi-Oh cards. So of course, Digimon is all I can think of.
Diginom. Okay, I'm assuming it's to do with virtually eating.
No, so it's a kind of person.
Oh, it's not nom. Oh, okay.
I want to look at that backwards and say it's Managid, but that's not right.
Okay. Pull it a bullet in this. Tell us what it is.
Digital nomad. The more common word is digital nomad. But a funny comedian I likes to say diginom, and I think that's very funny. Ina Lundström.
Do you know what? I would go with diginome because it's got that kind of like gnome vibe.
That's true. So digital nomad is a word describing people who choose to be without a stable home and to travel around and to work remotely and go from new places to new places. It's an interesting phenomena, and there is an association / company, I don't know exactly, called Wi-Fi Tribe, where people who are digital nomads like go to places together and travel together and like find each other, and they call that a Wi-Fi Tribe. I'm a little bit unclear exactly what it takes to be a Wi-Fi Tribe. I looked at their website and I didn't necessarily understand more. But yeah, it's a thing a lot of people do.
So it's taking work from home to a new level.
Yeah.
Work from no home.
Some people really like it.
What was the film with Frances McDormand about this kind of? Won the Best Picture. I thought it was called Nomad. Because what I was going to say is basically McDormand. This is one of those things that like, if you've got money, this is really cool. And if you don't, you're a feckless homeless beggar kind of thing. Like it's unfortunate and a bit nomad land is what I was thinking of. Sorry.
Okay.
Oh, that's right.
Because if you watch Nomadland,
it's in my queue.
You will see exactly what you've just described, right? A community of like alternatively homed people. And they would regularly get together for like big meetups where they share information and tips and tricks and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things that I think that film does a very good job of showing is how unsafe in ways beyond simply physical safety a life like that can be.
Yeah.
So I'm just a little bit wary of like the Insta van life people being like,
Oh, yeah.
hashtag blessed. And because that's essentially what we're talking about,
Yeah.
right? Is this like kind of creator culture who then go on the move. Now, that's not to say I'm sure there's probably like, I don't know, coders, for instance, out there who can just do their work wherever the fuck there is a computer and internet access.
There's a lot of people, I think, who can do that. The question and why I thought it was interesting when I heard about Wi-Fi Tribe is that, like, they recognize that only having interactions through digital medium is not enough, and they need to meet up persons. And they choose to meet up certain kinds of people in these spaces. Because as far as I understand, these Wi-Fi Tribe events and trips they meet each other in real life, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a very privileged position to be in, and it can still be very unsafe. I think it also says something about, because they're digital nomads in that they're physically homeless, but I think a lot of them would describe maybe they're like them having a village online. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay.
Like you still have a home. It's just not physical.
There was a wonderful episode of the sitcom My Name is Earl, which, if you've never seen it, basically every episode is Earl, the titular character, trying to right one sort of wrong that he's done to someone in his life. He's trying to be a better person. And in this particular episode, he tries to right a wrong with a guy, but he can't do it because the guy dies the day before he like goes to like apologize and make amends and stuff. And what he does is he goes, okay, I'm going to have to put on a really good like funeral for this guy. That's how I'm going to make amends, kind of thing. That's the best I can do. And he finds out that this person has no one in his life, right? Like 3/4 of the episode is him just desperately trying to find anyone, family, friends, and he can't find anyone. And then right at the end, he like nudges this dude's computer and it goes like bling, 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 and he sees all these messages from people like, where are you, man? What's happened? What's going on? And it was just a really lovely kind of reminder that some people find their world, their tribe in other ways.
Yeah.
It reminds me of The Grapes of Wrath, how this family is reduced to ashes and scattered to the winds. And out of that chaos, new relationships emerge. And it's a painful transformation of society and culture, but society and culture can be very robust.
Okay, fine, Daniel. I did a sitcom. You did high literature. We get it. You're very smart.
I haven't read it for a while.
But as a person who has chosen to go into academia, at least for a while, this is a problem that I face. Like, I'm unwillingly sort of a digital nomad in some ways. I don't like it.
Mm.
I make friends with people like you guys, and I go and see you, or I see friends at conferences, and I don't like that my village is spread out across the world. It's actually something that makes me like not want to be in this industry at all.
So is that, and here's us bringing it back to linguistics, is that something that's kind of relatively, certainly not only for linguistics, but for kinds of study that are not going to have like a department at a university? Because I have to imagine, say, the business department, right, probably has a staff of like 20 or 30 academics working concurrently. Do you how many linguistic?
It's across the entire university. Precarity is across. It's even across into non-academia kinds of labor that you get when you're choosing these kinds of topics. Casualization of the workforce, and like universities don't value, like if you get a permanent position opening up and you've had someone that you've casually employed for 5 years, they still need to compete with people from outside the university, and their experience within the university system doesn't count for anything. No, it's really bad all around.
When it was presented to me, it was like, yeah, well, you'll finish your PhD and then you'll do a number of postdocs and you'll go around the world wherever you can, and then you'll have to fight for a full-time position one day. And
yeah, that's it.
Wow, it was just miles away from what I wanted to do, being an established person, and that was one thing that made me realize, oh, okay, this is not going to be me.
Yeah.
And I have immense respect for anybody who can do it. Like, I don't know, you, Hedvig, and my other friends.
Respect the word that you need to say there. But
it is. I mean, being able to have that skill to be able to market yourself anywhere in the world and that needs you. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Let's go on to, I'm sorry. Let's go on to our last one. This one comes from Colleen on our Discord. Justifiably, there's been some pushback on quiet quitting. Quiet quitting is that kind of awful term about just doing your job, not letting work invade your life.
Giving into grind culture.
Yeah. Acting your wage.
Ooh,
A good alternative to quiet quitting. And it's a reference to Sarai Marie, a TikToker who's created a character called Valerie who doesn't take any nonsense. Have you seen this?
This is the girl with the giant Starbucks cup?
That's the one. Should we play some audio?
Absolutely.
Veronica, did you just decline the Zoom meeting that's at 6:30 tonight? Oh, yeah, I did. I did do that. Yeah, because it's outside of my working hours, 9 to 5, so I won't be attending. Okay, Veronica, I'm going to need you to complete all of this today. Susan, do I look like 2 people to you?
No.
Oh, okay, just making sure, because that looks like the work of 2 people, right? And I'm one. I'm just one person, right?
I saw a great stitch to one of, is it Veronica?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I saw a great stitch to this, which was basically some like super sketchy looking, like punk anarchist type person, like septum nose piercing, mohawk, all the rest of it. And this, I don't even know if this person identifies as female, but they were certainly AFAB presenting, basically went, I wonder how it feels to all of the like edgy Marxist boys with a podcast to know that the boss is single-handedly doing more to radicalize people than they will ever achieve in their entire lives. And I was like, that's so accurate. Wow. It's so true.
There's several TikTok accounts in this genre. I want to have a good name for I've accidentally stumbled into what I would call HR talk, like human resources TikTok. Which has a lot of these creators.
Human resource roleplay talk?
Yeah, there's a lot.
Oh, right.
There's like people who have bosses who are like supposed to try and be cool and like, oh, I'll sign your extension for your contract next week. We're friends, aren't we? And that kind of...
I've also, do you know what I've come across as well is actual HR representatives who are just flaming other people, but like in really appropriate ways.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think much like politician, HR cops... a lot of hatred from people for being like the stick in the muds, the boring people, all that kind of stuff. But a lot of the people on TikTok who are talking about HR are like, we're the people making sure that like good process is followed. Like they'll role play a boss being like almost like Michael from The Office, like we don't have cause to fire this person, and the boss is like, because I hate them.
Yeah. I've seen those too. Or like, but she's pregnant. We can't fire people because they're pregnant. Or like, people keep quitting my team. I don't understand. Yeah.
Well, there is one common factor here.
It's really funny.
Okay, so as entertaining as us talking about TikToks that we've seen, I'm sure is to our listening audience, we should probably move on.
Okay, well, that's about it. So, Red COVID, Diginom, Wi-Fi Tribe, and Acting Your Wage. There are words of the week. We've got some comments about ew, because we had the mailbag of ew, and we wondered, are there any words in other languages where you use ew or something like it? So, this one's from Dax at Speech Docs.
Hello, you're listening to us right now.
Yes, they do our transcripts, and they do a great job. A message for Ben, says Dax. Oh. I'm currently on book 2 of the Expanse series by James Corey and enjoying them immensely, but I will get to Warhammer 40k after this.
Oh, mate, they're so good. You are going to froth on these bad boys, and they're all out. Can I make a recommendation? Actually, can I really quickly pass the mic to Hedvig to make a recommendation? Because she made a recommendation to me, and I am now, like, I smashed through the 4 books that I could. Hedvig, you go.
The Steerswoman.
Uh-huh.
Oh!
Yeah. It's so good. I love it.
The Steerswoman by
Rosemary Kirsten. It's the best.
Oh, awesome.
You read all 4.
Yeah. So
what did you think?
Well, I'm halfway through book 4.
Okay. Oh my God. Okay.
I have a pretty good guess of what's going on. We can talk about it in a sec because I know Daniel will never read it.
Let's talk about it in a sec.
Might.
So anyway, Dax, the Steerswoman series is so so good. If you ever thought to yourself, hey, I wonder if academics could be like sword-wielding heroes of a story who like love truth and knowledge, my friend, is there a series for you?
Oh, so good. So good linguistic stuff.
So what do you actually have to say about ooh?
Dex continues, and also as a fan of the series and to answer your question on you in other languages, in Telugu we use tu. Now I'm not sure if that's aspirated T, tu, or thu, Thoo. I should know this. I guess this is used in other South Indian languages as well, but cannot testify completely to that. And that does sound like an adjective, doesn't it? Tu, spitting something out.
Yes. Yeah, like tu.
Yeah.
Cameron on Patreon says, I was fascinated by your discussion about you. As a millennial American, I have always used it, and I am not a Valley girl, and I had no idea it was so recent. Anyway, I wanted to add that Wolof, mostly spoken in Senegal and the Gambia, does have a similar exclamation, chim.
Huh.
As far as I know, it's only used as an exclamation and not in a sentence. It is mostly used in the same way one might exclaim, gross, and can be used to express disgust or displeasure with other things too, like a politician. Oh, that guy's gross. In the same way that an American might say, ew, about some horrible thing a Republican did.
Okay.
So Wolof has chim.
Huh. I was just going to make the theory that they all had to end in vowels. Screw me.
Oh,
Nope.
darn.
Nasals are basically vowels.
The next,
and that's the kind
next
of
thing.
academic rigor people come here for. You fudge it a little bit and a nasal
It's
young vowel.
close. Yeah, it's not like it's, approximate, but it's a nasal. It's close.
Yeah.
It's close. Big thanks to our guest for this episode, Dr. Hannah Little. Thanks to everyone who gave us ideas for the show. Thanks to Dustin of Sandman Stories, who is still recommending us to nearly everyone. Thanks to the team at Speech Docs, who transcribes our every word. Thanks to our sponsors, the Oxford English Dictionary, and most of all, thanks to our patrons who give us so much support and make it possible to keep the show going. And Ben and Hedvig, thank you for being here as well.
You're welcome.
Hey everybody, if you like the show, there are a number of things that you can do to help. What are they, you ask? Well, we'll tell you a few. Number one, you can send us ideas and feedback. And how do you do that? Well, you can follow us. We're Because Lang Pod everywhere except Spotify. You can leave us a message with SpeakPipe, but make sure you listen back to your message because I've gotten some not very good audio that I can't use. Ozzy, send it again. You can do that on our website, becauselanguage.com. You can also send us an email, hello@becauselanguage.com. Or you can tell a friend about us or leave a review. Hey guys, we have a new review. I'm going to read it.
Yay.
Here we go. This is from Nathaniel via Apple Podcasts. Nathaniel says, love the show. That's 6 O's. So that's a lot.
It's a lot of love.
Iconically speaking.
Yep.
5 stars. And then the comment, yes. That's it.
Simple.
That's all it
Clear.
takes. It's just,
Concise.
you don't have to
the
do very
point.
much.
Love it.
That counts. Hedvig, what's another way that people can support the show?
There are lots of ways, but I also wanted to add that if you don't use iTunes, Apple, there are other places you can review podcasts online that are good. We can link to some of them. We've done that
Sure.
before because iTunes. You can become a patron on Patreon. That'll entitle you to a bunch of extra stuff like bonus episodes, hanging out with us on Discord, and also just the warm, fuzzy feeling in your stomach knowing that you make it possible for us to do great things like transcripts, buy me a boom mic thing, and other good things. So I want to give a shout out to our top patrons. They are Dustin, Termi, Elias, Matt, Whitney, Chris L, Helen, Udo, Jack, Barrowcat, Lord Mortis, Grammar Yen, Larry, Christopher, Andy B, James, Nigel, Meredith, 8, Nasrin, Aisha, Moe, Steele, Manu, Roger, Rianne, Colleen, Ignacio, Sonic Snedgehog, Heaven, Jeff, Andy from Logophilias, Stan, Kathy, Rosh, Cheyenne, Felicity, Amir, Kenny Archer, O Tim, Alyssa, and Chris W. And the lovely Kate B, who smashed the one-time donation button on our website, becauselanguage.com, and who I got to see in Canberra really recently, which is very nice.
Oh, cool.
Hi, Kate.
And a special welcome to our newest patron. At the listener level, we have Vanya Molotov, Melody, Gordon, Weird for Words.
Is that supposed to be weird for words?
I think it's weird for words.
weird for words, but weird is spelled with a Y. And at the friend level, SCW. I'm very curious about that. Thanks to all of our amazing patrons.
Satan's Cunning Whispers. That's what I choose to believe that stands for.
It's probably like,
Maybe it's something really boring like strawberry chocolate whipped cream.
I was going to say it's going to be like Steve Kevin Worcester.
Okay, a Kevin with a C is deeply, deeply frightening to me, and it's so much worse than my satanic stuff.
Is that because of Skinny Puppy? Because one of the members there was Kevin with a C.
Oh, it's just, I don't know, just immediately, no. Kevin with a C.
Skinny Puppy owns you. Skinny Puppy owns your soul.
Our theme music has been written and performed by Drew Kraplianov, who's a member of Ryan Bino and Didian's Bible. Thank you for listening. We will catch you next time because language.
Yay! You guys are awesome. Thank you. So it sounds like we have stickers. The Mystery Animator's working on a chibi version of us. Is that right?
Yes. We've been talking on Twitter DMs of all places because they keep posting like, all my commissions are open. And I was like, maybe we should like actually do it.
Let's commit.
I tried to like filter the information you guys are talking about back to them. And they were like, yeah, I get the gist. Something that can scale. And they even suggested like making a couple of small ones that can be used for emoji stickers on Patreon.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Good. I'm working on the postcards. It'll just be stills of us from last weekend.
Fair enough.
Please, just whatever you do, not that horrendous photo of us doing the heart. Like,
what do you
that
mean?
was woof.
That was really cute.
That's one of them.
Not only did we get a lot of people online talking about how wronged you in particular were, Hedvig, but like I got people offline doing it as well. Like I literally rolled over in bed and was like, how did you allow this out? Take it down. And I had to say, well, like that was her. She put it up.
Yeah.
What? I'm having trouble seeing the problem. Well, tell you what, I think we need to move on. Can we save what's the Duolingo update? Is that a quick one?
It's very quick. Duolingo made an update and everyone's upset.
Okay.
Why?
You can't go back. Like they've made like a unidirectional skill tree and people can't work on more than one lesson at one time.
Oh.
And everyone...
Gee,
I wonder why.
Yeah.
Have they articulated why?
I don't know. I just saw they made the update and then I saw everyone getting upset and I thought, it's news.
To our listeners who now have questions, you have no further information.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay,
you're the journalist.
Right.
I'm the
top flight.
Thank you.
The mentoring starts now. This is bad.
Adding value.
This is not good.
No, anyway, if anyone finds out why they've done it, it seems like bad.
Yeah, this is my traditional mug. It's from a bookstore called Atticus, and you can see the logo here. It's got a mockingbird.
Oh, nice. That's a good cup.
And I think of Atticus as my model as a father. So.
Oh wow.
Atticus Finch.
Well, I mean, it's a bit of a cheat though, right? Because he's just like the god character, right?
He's the Mary Sue, isn't he?
It's like saying like the Doctor is my model for some sort of like infinitely capable human who in no way bears any relation to actual creatures.
But if I can get 70% there, I win.
Yeah, fair enough.